Welcome, teachers, to Wolang Wednesday. We are in it, y'all. This is class 2 out of 12 for our spring series on, you know it, you love it, curriculum. We are in it. And today I'm here to welcome you to what is a class that is really near and dear to my heart, something especially for level 1 teachers. So I'm really excited to have you here with me today. Join me in the comments below. Let me know, A, where are you watching from? And B, I have a really, really important question for you. Okay. It's earth shattering. It's really important. What are you getting for dinner today? What are you getting for dinner today? Are you cooking? And here's the real reason why I'm asking you, because if you're like me, then my family just went to go to our apartment complex and get us Johnny Poppers. Johnny Poppers is a really nice burger food truck that's coming. So midway through this class, there's going to be a bunch of burger wafts up in my house, and I'm just really excited about it. I can't even contain it. But thank you so much for joining me for this next class. Y'all, if you were here for the last week, then you know how good this one is going to be. So let me get into this here and share my screen, and I am going to check here to see that everything is working well for us and that it is going on. I'm so glad that you are here with me today. Let's get started. Last week, we talked all about just what curriculum looks like in general. And today we are talking about especially what is going on with level 1. Ooh, I see y'all. I see y'all. Thank you so much for joining me. Melissa is from North Carolina. Ooh, where? Because you're probably not that far from me. And I have a bunch of relatives in North Carolina and having leftovers. No shame in that game. I love me some leftovers. I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Okay. So where do we have the rest of our people coming in from? Let me know. Let me know. Ashboro? Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly where you're at. I'm in Charleston. Thanks for hanging out. Okay, y'all, let's get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure that we get right into all this goodness so that as soon as these burgers get here, and I know that y'all have important things to do with your life and your dinner, let's get into it. Okay, so if you were here last week, let me know if you were, because I'd love to say thank you. And then if you weren't, of course, we're going to talk about some things as well, just to keep you on your toes. But if you are new around these parts, welcome. I'm really glad to be hanging out with you today. My name is Devin, and I am the teacher, author, and presenter behind La Libre Language Learning, if you teach French, or La Libre Language Learning, if you teach Spanish. And I'll be telling you a little bit more about my background, but the number one thing I want you to remember here is that I love curriculum. I love curriculum. It's my absolute favorite thing to talk about, my favorite thing to teach about, and it was my favorite thing to work on when I was in the classroom full-time. Now I do things like this full-time, which is really exciting that I get to hang out with teachers in a very new space for me. So let's get into part 2 of our spring curriculum series. So the first thing I need to tell you is that this is going to be happening every Wednesday. So thank you for coming and joining me at the new time. Like, I'm already starving because I'll be real with you that I am on a new weight training program. I love lifting weights, but I have the lifting hunger. I'm starving right now. So if you are hungry, join the club, because at 5:30, it's usually like too late for me to be doing anything. I'm like already ready to jump into some food. So I'm gonna be hungies while we're hanging out for this one, but that's just how much I love y'all. Also, I took my son to the doctor, and that's why this class is a little bit later than usual, because normally we hang out at 3 p.m. So that's where the whole story is coming from, is that every 3 p.m. I go live to do a class. Stephanie, you're joining us from Maine. What part of Maine? I'm obsessed with Maine. I used to go to summer camp. For 3 years, I went to a summer camp in Jackman, Maine, if you've ever heard of that tiny logger town. I love Maine. Canada, Adriana, thanks for joining us in Canada. What part of Canada are you in? That's really cool. Stephanie, I'm usually still in school at 3 and catching the replay. Oh, I'm so glad that you can be here with us live today then, Stephanie. Yeah, so here's the other part about this, is that this is the exciting thing, is that I bet you a lot of y'all will be able to catch this maybe at a different time, since it is a little bit later, which is exciting. I can't really do classes later than this because of my family schedule and what's going on with me picking up my son from school and all that stuff. And just like you guys are busy. So I'm really glad that we can maybe do this at a little bit of a different time and hang out. So if you are new around these parts, again, hi, I'm Devin. I know you're about to get into some stuff, so gear up, get ready. It's always this high energy. I was a French and Spanish teacher for 5 years before I moved into this new role of being a curriculum creator. And I lived in the public high school sphere. I'm in the Charleston, South Carolina area, and that's where I taught. And I've taught in rural. So I taught very far outside of my house with a long commute, and in a small school. And then I've also done large, the second largest school in my state, and on the semi-urban side of life as well. So I've seen a lot of different things. And through all of it, curriculum really became my favorite thing. It's absolutely my jam. I've also, hey, if you are this, put it in the comments below because I would love to know. Are you a Department of One? I was a Department of One twice, my first year and then my last year in the classroom teaching, which was really lonely because it was during pandemic teaching and that was not fun to be a Department of One. But my best years of teaching, I would say, was when I was with a really strong department of 12 other powerhouse teachers. That was awesome. But there are some advantages to being a Department of One, even though your lot is definitely a little bit harder. Doing both, your lot is a lot harder as a Department of One. Do we have any Department of Ones in here? Hi from New Jersey. Yeah, Jersey in the house. You're on the closer to New Hampshire. Oh, cool. Oh, Ottawa. Awesome. That's exciting. Michelle, you've been a Department of One for 20 years. The goddess, the queen. She knows it all. That's exciting. That really is exciting. You've seen everything. You've really seen everything. So let me know what you think of all the things that we're about to see here for level 1, because you have seen level 1 as it's changed throughout the years too. Okay, so that's where I started. And then this is how I've progressed through the different stages of curriculum. My first experience came with curriculum. Also tell me if this is anything that you've ever experienced before. I really fell in love with curriculum by necessity, because as a Department of One, Michelle, you know exactly what this is like. I had to make everything. So since I was the only one in my school, I was actually a Department of One in my district. In that very rural, small district, I was the only language teacher. I was the only Spanish teacher. There was one other Spanish teacher as well, but she had a very different style than I did. So we couldn't really share materials in that respect. And oh my gosh, I had to create everything because my textbook was falling apart, 20 years old. You know, the whole story, we don't even need to get into it because I'm sure all of you have already been there. But I had to create everything that I wanted to use myself. And to the point where I enjoyed it so much that I probably spent way too much time doing it. And then when I got to a district level, I was able to experience the power of teachers collaborating together to work on a curriculum that was for thousands and thousands and thousands of students instead of just mine. That was incredible. That was incredible. And I wanted to be a part of that team as soon as I knew that it existed. So I applied to be a part of the district curriculum creation when they were transitioning from a half proficiency to like a 75% proficiency, in terms of we taught with semi-legacy methods and a few CI things here and there. Although CI is not really a method, it's more like an umbrella of methods, but we were trying to use things as much as we could with the resources that we had, right? And I don't know about you, but that's really where I find most people to be, especially in the state of world language that is in America. I can't really speak to if it's Adriana or Adriana, please correct me. I want to make sure that I'm saying your name right, but maybe you can speak to this in Ontario too. But the way that it's been in America for the teachers that I've been talking to is that a lot of proficiency is still like, we're moving in that direction, but we're not quite there yet. So it's still even though it's not a new idea, it's definitely, it's gaining momentum. So what we were trying to do was get us to the point where we had the resources we really need to support what we were trying to accomplish. And that's what we tried to do with our district. And we started with assessments, and then it was kind of trickling from there. So I jumped on that experience. That was phenomenal, but it also taught me a lot about what it meant to have a really robust curriculum. And it left that taste in my mouth of like, this is exciting, but there's so much more that can be done here. And the next opportunity I had was 2 years ago in 2019, when South Carolina reached out to me and asked if I would be a team of, I was not special, but a team of one out of 80 teachers to work on the first proficiency centered curriculum for South Carolina. And I'm going to show you a link to, if you have not seen one of these classes before, I'm going to give you that link to that curriculum. It is completely free and provided to you by the state. This was a state whatever project, commissioned, I guess you could say. So it's available to you, and it's K through 12, immersion, all the languages that I can think of, Latin, German, Chinese, French and Spanish, as well as all different versions of immersion, K through 6, all the bells and whistles, all the things. But what I worked on was the high school part of it. And I moved into a space in my career that I really wanted to impact more teachers and move beyond what was going on in the four walls of my classroom. So I decided to step outside of the classroom and work on curriculum full time. And now I do curriculum consultations and audits for schools and other organizations. But really my favorite thing now is being here with you, is teaching teachers how to create your own curriculum if you're in that phase. Or if you are a seasoned expert, how to tweak what you already have to make it just a little bit better and make it work for you. Because here's the real deal about curriculum. And this is what we're going to be doing today. Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about 9 common level 1 mistakes that happen. So we're going to be diving real deep into level 1 today and what you can do instead. But here's the real truth about curriculum, is that it is a long game. Something I want you to remember from last week, whether you were here or not, here are some of the bullet points. And there's, of course, a replay of that class if you'd like to see it on my Facebook page, YouTube, all of the things. And I'd be happy to drop a link of that for you. But it's a long game. It's something that you have to work on piece by piece. Many people do think that it's something that you can only, fiddle with in the summer. But you can work on it piece by piece and make it better a little bit as you go along. A way that you can definitely approach that is maybe even each quarter to move in a slightly different direction. Just a 1% course correction will make huge amounts of waves for your program. And it's also important to give your program time to really develop, because making too many changes too fast, you won't be able to see those seeds really grow and develop. But here is why I love teaching teachers how to create their own curriculum, either from scratch or to work with what you already have, because as you know, many of us in world language are accidental experts, and we're going to be piecing things together as we go along, is that curriculum eliminates that daily decision fatigue that I felt every day in my first year, second, and third year of, what on earth am I going to teach today, and how am I going to do it? Give me some love in the comments if you have ever felt that way before in your classroom. What am I teaching, and how am I going to do it? And I will tell you that I felt that way as somebody who was seen as a curriculum specialist in my district. I still felt that way, because what we worked on in all of those curriculum meetings was a skeleton and really refined IPAs and assessments, but we didn't have all the things in between to get us to that very lofty goal. So every day I'm left with most of the groundwork of trying to figure out, like, okay, I know where my goals are. How am I gonna get there? It was hard. So working on curriculum really does help eliminate that daily decision fatigue. So I think it is a really good thing for us to focus on. And that's why we're doing a whole series on it, because I think that tweaking your curriculum when you have the time and energy for it, when it works for you, okay? Because it might not be this week, it might not be until the summer. That's okay. We're planting the seeds now so that you are ready to blossom when it is your time. But focusing on curriculum lets you focus on what you're here to do. Teach. It lets you focus on teaching, which is the point, which is why we're all here. When your curriculum is really dialed in and you have something that you like, it allows for your daily decisions to be that much easier because you're already making 20,000 daily decisions as it is. So add on to that the stress of, is this lesson that I've chosen hitting my daily goals? Is this activity that I've chosen or this unit that we're in, is this even getting us towards a more proficient classroom? You frankly don't have the energy to be deciding that. You really don't, right? But if you're in that boat, right, you got to keep paddling. It's okay. We've all been there, and good things take time. So the less that you can be in that boat and the more that you can be in like a big luxurious cruise liner that has all of your distance learning needs taken care of, that is heading you on a course for proficiency, and you're not the one steering, you're the one making sure that all of your students are lined up at the buffet and choosing the right healthy things for them. That's where we want you to be. And that's my really messy metaphor for the day. Hope you enjoyed it. So before we get, bye Adriana, we'll hang out with you later. Let me check in with these comments. Most days I feel like a department of one. Heard that. That has happened. That has happened. Thanks y'all for coming. This is going to be fun. So before we jump into this, because we're about to, but I have one last thing to ask you. Make sure that you realize that the time that you are spending with me is your most valuable resource. It is not money. It is not a ready-made resource. No, 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 no. The most valuable thing, the thing that you can never get back in your life, is time. So make sure that you have set an intention and an action plan for this class. What are you going to get out of this class by the time that you leave? What are you going to do this week if it's only one thing? And it could be really small. There's no right or wrong answer to this. It could be something as small as, I'm going to send an email to my department head asking if we could tweak one of the units, or asking if we could remove an assessment, or asking if I could have some extra planning time to look over one of the lists of vocabulary, functional chunks, or whatever you're calling your guiding list for that unit or that section, asking if we can have that looked over again and maybe spend some time working on it. If that's the one thing that you do this week, that's a great thing. Do not look at this list of 9 things and be like, well, I can't do any of them right now. That's too much. So I'm just going to move on. Then this time that we have together won't be worth it and won't be meaningful to you. So make sure, tell me, what is your intention and your action plan? I want you to be thinking about it as you hear what's going on in this class today, because I'm going to ask you again at the end of class. So what are you going to get out of our time together? Before we start, what stresses you out about your curriculum? What are you thinking right now as a level 1 teacher that you're like, I don't know about that? Before I even get into this first mistake number 1 that I bet you could probably predict, because, you know, we all do it. We all do it. We're all guilty of it. What is that one thing, or maybe 2, or maybe a million, about your curriculum right now that drove you to be here at this class? And while you're thinking about that, tell me what your thoughts are on mistake number 1. Give me a yes if this is something that's happening in your level 1 class right now. Put a yes in the comments. Put a yes in the comments if this is something that's going on in your level 1 class. And my replay friends, hey replay. Hello, friends from the future. It's so nice to see you. Michelle's saying that, that it won't be good enough. Oh. Say it for the people in the back again. We've all felt that. We've all felt that. I'm working on a curriculum right now and I feel that way every day. Is this going to be good enough? Because your kids deserve the best. But here's the real truth. If you're doing the absolute best that you can with what you have right now in this moment, then that's enough. Because remember what I told you at the beginning of class, that this is a long game. Your curriculum's probably not good enough right now. Nobody's is, because it takes 3 to 5 years for you to really get a beautifully robust program up and running in your school at least, bare minimum. It's probably not good enough. And that's okay, because what matters is that you are course correcting as you go, and that each year it gets better. That is what makes the difference, because what usually happens is that a lot of schools or teachers get fatigued with what happens in the process of constant curriculum change. And we're not going to go down that route right now, but you can watch last week's class where we talk about that problem that is endemic in world language, about we change the curriculum too much because we're always trying to put new things in there. But what really needs to happen is instead to focus on what needs to be amplified and do more of it to take away, and instead of completely shifting focuses on content all the time, because that really is a lot. That really is a lot. You need yours updated. We all do. We all do. We all need ours updated. That is real. That you're trying to do too much. We all are. We all are. You're speaking into everything that all teachers are probably feeling right now. I can't speak for all teachers, but I know that all three of you, those are all things that I feel. Those are all things that I feel all the time. Here is mistake number one. Let me know if you are doing this. Melissa says yes. I know I did this for, oh my gosh, like the first 4 years that I taught. I didn't start doing this until I was brave enough in year 5 to start doing this, but it was amazing what happened when I started doing this. When you move away from this first mistake, which is only teaching present tense and regulars. So what do I mean by that? It's that belief that language comes to us in this well-oiled machine, this like beautiful line, this linear progression of language that's just really neat, clear cut. Language is not like that. Language comes to us by what we use the most in our daily life, in our experiences, and what's the most relevant to us. So guess what? It doesn't care about whether the verb is irregular, whether the spelling is crazy, or whether the pronunciation is crazy. So we're doing a disservice by sheltering our level 1 students from the grammar that they need to get through the most important sentences that they're going to hear every day. Think about your high frequency verbs. If you're familiar with this term, all of them are irregular in almost every language. I can't speak to other ones, but I know that in French and Spanish, and I'm in the process of getting a German resource translated right now, they're almost all irregular. And the reason why is because the words that we use the most get changed the most. So shelter vocabulary, things that your students won't need or use a lot, shelter that instead of grammar. That's what you should do instead of only teaching present tense. And oh my God, can I tell you how powerful it is to teach your students about what they did that weekend, even though it is irregular? And you don't have to like go down the whole rabbit hole of teaching them everything about weekend vocabulary, but weekend chats are a friggin' game changer in world language classrooms, especially in middle school and high school, because they will get your students chatting and you'll be able to personalize it so much. And not only that, you will get into all of the things that, surprise, people who are speaking the language actually talk about every day. What they do, what they did, and what they're interested in. Because what your kids did that weekend is the stuff that they want to do, right? Instead of the things that are in your classroom, which, you know, is a kind of a forced environment for them. So weekend chats are a real thing. Weekend chats, if you've never done this before, or if you have, let me know. Let me know if you're into that. Stephanie, it's not culturally responsive enough. Ooh, tell me more about that thought. Tell me more about that thought, because I like where you're going with that. Tell me more about that thought. I find weekend chats are a really great way to personalize, and that is one of the foundations of culturally responsive teaching too, which is great about weekend chats. But I would love to know more about what you think about that. And using high frequency verb lists is also really going to help you get on the right track with this, so that you don't, because you don't have to teach like the whole gambit of all these irregular verbs and throw all these difficult, quote unquote, difficult things at students. They don't need to know the entire verb chart or the entire tenses of everything that's in there, right? They need what they need to communicate the most essential pieces of the language. So look at the high frequency verb list to help you figure out exactly what that would be. If you've never done a weekend chat before, going back to that original thought, the weekend chat is where you teach students how to say last weekend or yesterday or on Saturday, I did, I went, I saw, and a few places or things that they did and like with my friends. It's really just a few phrases and it's a great way to just get people talking. And then you as a teacher also get to demonstrate a lot of that past tense questioning by using those questions. ¿Qué hiciste este fin de semana? Qu'est-ce que tu as fait? All those. And they'll love it. They'll love talking about their weekends. Plus, it gets great conversation started in class. Oh, this is a good one. So we're going to move on to this one. Mistake number 2. Assuming that students know how to study a language. You probably don't think that you're doing this, but it's happening. It's happening. What I mean by this is your students have no idea what we're talking about when we say things like proficiency, when we say things like comprehensible input, when we say things like output, when we say things like 90% target language. They have no idea what you're talking about. Like we're still teaching language teachers what those things are. So it's really important that we show students, that we invest in them the skills that they need in order to be successful in a language learning environment. So instead of the typical thing that might usually happen in your first 2 weeks of class, here's what I used to do in the first 2 weeks class. And I have a full blog post about this if you'd like to see it. But here's what I used to do. On the first day of class, students would come in and they would learn about a French-speaking country with a little info card that's completely in French, and then a place for them to go look some things up online that's also in French, but they could choose to do it in English if they wanted to. And then the next thing they did is they would watch a music video in French and try and figure out what the music video was about. And we go into a little bit of a social justice lesson. And then the next part was, okay, let's get into some study skills for what it means to be a language learner. And we would learn about what is a language parent? Like, what does it mean to be in an immersive environment? What is it? How do you describe things if you don't know what they are and what the word is for them? So we would do things like circumlocution activities. For example, you're not allowed to say the word pencil. How would you describe a pencil if you were not allowed to say the word pencil? It has an eraser, it's skinny, it writes, like things like that. Because if your entire class is mostly along the lines of like legacy teaching, then what you're probably doing is a lot of presentation and then practice. And presentation and practice is along the lines of you're showing a PowerPoint with a lot of vocabulary words, and then your students are practicing those dialogues or those vocabulary terms or whatever it might be, and then you assess them on it. But that is giving them the impression that language is something that you can learn out of a book or that works like their history class, which is not at all the case. You need to teach students just by their experience in class. Yellow microphone. You need to teach them by their experience in class and the types of activities that we do and the way that we structure our curriculum with some time to teach students about proficiency. And I taught them about ACTFL as well and the levels of proficiency. And I also showed them some examples of like what an OPI looks like and what novice level means and what novice high was and the difference between them. That really helped them to understand what it meant to be like, okay, well, you don't have to be somebody who's really adept at copying somebody else's accent. What matters is that you're able to describe a pencil when you don't know the word pencil. That's much more valuable in a language class, because your students are going to come into class with a lot of preconceived notions about what it means to be a good language learner. They think it means that you need to know all the words and you need to have a good accent, when that is of course not the case, because many brilliant language teachers do not have even close to native language accents, I guess you could say, or pronunciations, but they're advanced mid, advanced high teachers. Invest in them and what it means to be a good language student. And that also will reach beyond a lot of barriers of what they usually experience at school, which is that knowledge is what is important instead of understanding and demonstration of skill. We're here for demonstration of skill rather than knowledge about language. Mistake number 3. Oh, we got some peeps talking about weekend chats. Okay, so Melissa says, I started weekend chats second semester and the students look forward to Mondays. That's what happened for mine too. Yeah. Stephanie, weekend chat has been difficult during hybrid learning. I bet. Weekend chat was a lot harder for me when I went completely asynchronous. For the last few parts of the time when I was still in the classroom, it was really hard because it was very one-sided for me. You can still do it. It was really one-sided. But there are still other things that you can do. And I would recommend that you go to people and like creep on in the Facebook groups of people who are doing it and doing it well in hybrid learning. But can I share a secret with you? That if you caught in the conference for practical and comprehensible, I will be really, really real with you that a lot of the teachers, the master presenters who are in a hybrid learning environment, they admitted that everything about their classroom was incredibly difficult. I mean, weekend chats, assessment, you name it. Everything about it was 2 to 3 times as hard as anything that they had ever experienced. So please do not feel like you're alone. And in that conference of 2,000 teachers, everybody else who was teaching hybrid felt the same way. It was hybrid is rough. You are not alone in that respect. And that weekend chat can be really difficult to get around with that. Something that I did, in case you'd like to try it, something that I did while I was teaching completely asynchronously is that I would post weekend chat recordings on Flipgrid, where I would tell students about what I did that weekend, and I would demonstrate to them exactly how I was doing it with some scaffolding and some, why am I forgetting what the word is right now? Charts. I had those big, I had those Post-it charts you could stick on the wall, and anchor charts. Dang it, that's what they're called. I had anchor charts with the vocabulary that I would need just for that task or that weekend chat, whatever it was. And what I asked students to do was to personalize it for themselves. And there was definitely a ton of Google Translate that occurred during those things. So what I had to do as we went throughout it is try and make more back and forth with the students with responding to them. So that's the way that I try to combat that as much as possible. You are not alone. Thank you, Steve. Michelle, I should have just looked down at you. Anchor chart. Bethany Drew's weekend chat placemat is great. There you go. Thank you, Miriam, for saving the day. Just here to lift us all up. Thank you for that. So make sure you check that one out. That's really, really helpful. Thank you. Okay, let me know if you've ever experienced this, maybe even pressure from a department or other teachers or a curriculum to do this, because it's a thing in level 1 and we need to chat about it. So mistake number 3 is asking students to speak too soon. Now, what do I mean by that? Because I'm not just talking about necessarily like the silent period. I'm also not talking about whether students can respond to you. What I am talking about is middle and high school students who are walking into a world language class and are absolutely terrified and have so many other social factors on them besides just the actual learning of a language. And so here are some things that I want you to keep in mind when it comes to asking students to speak, because I'm a firm believer that students should be speaking. My students were speaking on the first day, but they were saying the absolute simplest of things. I mean, colors. And then they would have their first speaking quiz in 2 weeks. And that was on block. But here's something I want to encourage you to remember. Everyone's style is really different. So style is important in this. And also very different teaching methods that are all widely regarded as very successful, from OWL, organic world language, to several different types of CI purist methods. They all advocate for different things and different levels of the silent period and all that stuff. And there's research kind of going in different directions on this. There is definitely a silent period, but there's also a lot from the output hypothesis that says that students need an opportunity to speak. But just remember that social factors are a thing, and opt for privacy a ton in level 1. Like the amount, and I'm just speaking from personal experience for this, the amount of difference you will get from your students in output when you allow them to just do a Flipgrid with you one-on-one And the difference between you pulling a student out of class to do a speaking assessment and doing it behind a closed door and having the other students work on something else while they do a speaking assessment with you, glorious. It works wonders. Also, not all of your students need it. Like some of your students are just going to be like, whatevs, I'll just tell you all of my things right here. No big deal. I will also say that this is not something that you need all the time or for all students, is being careful about your level of comfort, their students' level of comfort for this mistake number 3. Because even in a class where there was very, very low level of comfort when it came to language for a level 1 class that I taught in French, the students around the middle of the year, everybody was comfortable doing a special person interview in the front of the room as long as they were able to volunteer. I shouldn't say everybody because only volunteers did it. But when they were volunteered and they were given a little bit of a incentive to do it, then they were much more willing to do it. If you're really interested in this concept, I suggest that you check out something like OWL, which is Organic World Language. Never going to claim to be an expert in that, but I think it's a really cool way because it is based entirely on creating community within your classroom so that your students do feel comfortable sharing everything that they want to. Because asking students to speak too soon and to say too much and to put too much of themselves out there when they don't have a lot of scaffolding will really cut the safety and the community of your classroom really fast. So even though you do need to keep that academic rigor up there, something to keep in mind is that you can do that while still giving students the option for privacy. Think instead, I should go back to this. Think instead, how can they participate? What are ways that they could participate, maybe without speaking right away? Like they can do thumbs up and thumbs down for like yes and no questions. They can do sí or no, oui ou non, things like that. Like how can they participate instead first before they're ready to jump on out there? And then on the other side of this, I would say mistake number 4 is assuming that students aren't ready for language. Pish, pish, pish. Nonsense. Students are ready on the first day. Students are ready on the first day. They are ready for a lot more than we think they are. The speaking specifically means that they're going to be putting themselves out there in a way that they have not put themselves out there before. And you have a lot of social factors that you need to keep in mind, especially when it comes to high schoolers. So I myself always taught high schoolers, so I know how many different social factors that you have going on there. But oh, they're so ready. They're so ready to listen. They're so ready to participate. They're so ready for that language in their brains, even if they pretend that they're not. I even still remember a student that I had that would read one of my CI readers and tell me all the time, I can't read this, Miss Gunning. I can't read this. And I would go and point to a word. What does that mean? He knew it. What does that next word mean? He knew it. What does that next word mean? He knew it. What does that next word mean? I don't know. What does it look like? Looks like this word. He knew it. He knew it. They're ready for language. But the fact that they're different words and very different combinations that they don't know how to say really freaks them out. So give them time. And we'll talk about that whole newbie factor in a minute. But they want to interact with you. They want to feel successful. It's just that everything about a new language is kind of scary. So give them some time and make them comfortable. Equip them with a way to interact with you that doesn't require, because here's the difference with novices, something that doesn't require a ton of original or independent target language. Original, which means a thought that they are putting together either in a different sequence with words that you have not provided them in that specific order. That's original. And then independent is without any kind of scaffolding, without the infamous anchor charts. People forget this a lot, but that's actually an intermediate low skill. Okay, that is not a novice skill. Stay away from that. That is not something in your novice's wheelhouse. They will talk to you all day long in the phrases that you give them, and they'll be able to slightly rearrange them, but that's it. So getting more into that idea, let's take a look at this. Here's an example. And we're going to do a whole class on can-dos and how this can really drive your curriculum forward. But here's something I want you to look at. This is a can-do statement for novice mid. This is where many of your students will be Your average students at an average pace in about the middle of the year, depending on how many contact hours you've got, they'll be at novice mid. I can request and provide information by asking and answering a few simple questions on very familiar and everyday topics, using a mixture of practiced or memorized words, phrases, and simple sentences. A mixture of practiced or memorized words, phrases, and simple sentences. So let's go back to this idea here. Your students are absolutely ready to absorb language, like especially reading. Many of your students, when they come into your class, will actually be at an intermediate, low, novice, high reading level, depending on how many cognates there are related to English. Like if you're teaching, a Teutonic language like German, oh my gosh, they're going to have so much to work with. Not like I know anything about that. I've never taught German, but in that same respect, with French, 30% of French vocabulary is English vocabulary. So there's a lot to work with there. You don't really have to worry that much about the structure in terms of them being able to understand the full text. They can pull out a lot of words to tell you what it's about. So they'll be able to interact with the text without you teaching them anything, but they're not going to be able to give you original independent target language until they're intermediates. Many of your students will be able to do it, but that doesn't mean all of them. So take a look at the difference there. They're using familiar, everyday topics, things like the world around them, things that they interact with every day, like school or their friends or their family, or also just simple things like opinions, things I like, things I don't like. Like that's all first, second, and third person, and maybe moving into the plurals a little bit. And they're using a mixture of practiced or memorized words, okay? There's no new language here. And simple sentences, nothing crazy. There's nothing crazy going on here. Okay. This is kind of my favorite one. I'm not going to lie. This is my favorite mistake. My favorite mistake. Yeah, I went there. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. So mistake number 5, we're going wide instead of deep. And you know why? Because as level 1 teachers, I'm a diehard level 1 teacher. Level 1 is my favorite. It's my favorite. Sorry, 2s. Love you. Mean it. Level 1's my favorite. Going wide instead of deep with our students because we feel this pressure. Have you ever felt this way? Because of maybe things going on in your district, stuff that your guidance department has told your students about this class, the fact that maybe you're like me and you have a lot of 18-year-olds that this is their only exposure to language they're ever going to have. You feel this pressure. Que presión. This is my only shot to cram as much language and culture in their beautiful brains as possible. It's my only shot. Because how many of your students drop off after level 1? Like, please give me a yes if you have felt this way before, because I know a lot of level 1s feel this. Or maybe it's just me, and this is just my favorite mistake. No, I won't sing for you again. You only get one shot. But this happens so often with world language teachers because in a lot of places, especially where I teach, a lot of your students, okay, good. Michelle, I knew you got me. That your kids drop off after level 1, right? So you're like, this is my only chance to make them love me. This is my only chance to make sure that they stay my babies forever. And so we have this thought in our minds of, we're going to put everything that they need to know, all the important people in culture, all of the important things, like everything that they need to know is going to happen in level 1. What if you switched to this instead? This is the beginning of a gorgeous journey. This is my shot to make kids fall in love with language. Everything changed for me when I switched to that perspective. The last school that I taught at was a tech school where my students were so lucky. Well, I shouldn't say lucky because I think every student should have this, but they had all of these awesome work opportunities so that they could get all of these amazing certificates in different trade skills before going out into the workforce, like cosmetology and oh my gosh, all kinds of things like wood shop and welding. All these things are really expensive careers normally in terms of getting certifications for them. Like they could get them at my school. And so our world language was very much treated like an elective, because not because we didn't have a good program, but just because my students are very career focused. They were really driven students, and they did not see how this was going to impact them. So what I did instead was, let's make sure that everything that we do in this class, since I know I'm working with tech students, especially many of them who are probably going to go into the workforce probably for a few years or maybe never go to college, because they'll find very well-paying jobs doing this work first and they'll fall in love with it, is how can I make this incredibly relevant to the career path that they're choosing? And so for fashion design and cosmetology, oh my gosh, we had so many opportunities with language for that, right? Because that is literally an international job. And we did the same thing for military. We did the same thing for all of those things, is making it crazy relevant and highly curated so that your students have a chance to fall in love with what's there. I want you to think of it with these two very different experiences. There's one experience where you go into, let's go back to our cruise ship buffet. You walk into the cruise ship buffet and you, hi, Eric. You gonna tell him about how your doctor's visit went? Yeah, he needs glasses now. It's for real. What color are your glasses gonna be? Blue. Yeah, they're gonna be awesome. Azul, no? And let's imagine that you're going to a cruise ship buffet and you have so many things laid out before you. And all those things, you're right in my face, silly. All those things are... These
people are not talking.
I know, that's because they're hanging out with me and watching. So if you're at a cruise ship buffet, you have a million things in front of you to choose from, right? And you kind of get decision overwhelm, and you're also not going to get, by the way, anything truly well made, right? Because your cruise ship chefs have a lot of pressure to churn everything out and do a lot. They're in the game of volume, not in the game of excellence. And then imagine the last time that you went to the most sumptuous and beautiful restaurant that only had 6 things on the menu. Only 6 things. And you ordered those. I'm a diehard foodie. So this is why this restaurant metaphor is going to sink deep into my bones and make me love the city that I live in. You go to a restaurant that only has a few things on the menu, like 6 or 7, and everything that comes out to you is so beautifully crafted and well done. And it's done with such care. It's the whole idea of less is more, of essentialism. If you've read that book by Greg McKeown, that was a life changer for me. That you can serve your students better with much more quality by, here's a thought. I know it's going to make you cry a little bit. It made me cry a little bit. What if you only chose 3 famous people from your culture to show them? Who would you pick? And what if your job, instead of showing them the entire bounty of Hispanic culture, was making them fall in love with Hispanic culture from the 3 amazing people that you chose? Because for me, it was J Balvin, Celia Cruz, and I chose one more person that I can't remember right now. The most recent class I taught was French. So for me, I chose Aimé Césaire, who's a politician and a beautiful poet from Martinique. Luan, who's a French musician, and Angelique Kidjo, who's another musician, but she's also a UN activist. Like, those were the 3 celebrities that I really focused in on for Francophone culture. And I instead did everything in my class to be focused on those 3 people for level 1, knowing with the idea that I would have much more to work with level 2 in terms of time, because I would have the same students, that whole thing. And I just knew that my students in that year had a much richer, deeper experience with the 3 people that I chose and gave them some opportunities to be curious and discover things on their own. So that became my shot to make kids fall in love with language, to fall in love with real cooking. You have to go to a restaurant where there's only a few things on the menu, because that's how you know that those people are real experts in that. Instead of trying to try everything and feed them this buffet of stuff that's only half well done. And that requires deep connections with people, deep connections with topics and relationships with those people. Try going deep instead. All right, here's my next one for you, since we're talking about culture. In level 1, we love to assume as teacher that we can put culture in the corner. You can watch last week's class to hear more about that. But I would say in level 1, we're especially guilty. And I will say me as well, because I was a level 1 teacher who made all these mistakes. How do you think I knew how to put all of these together? But mistake number 6 is assuming that cultural competence cannot be assessed. But it's a lot easier for us now because we have something called the Intercultural Competencies to help us. You ready for this? I'm going to show you something real quick. Let me see if you can see this. Hopefully you can. This is an article from Actful. Is it showing? Okay. Looks like it is. This is an article from Actful called Leading with Culture. And I've put a link to this article in this event, and I'll be happy to share it with you in the comments after class as well. Highly recommend that you read this. It takes like 10 minutes. It's very, very quick, but it just explains what the ICCs are. This is a publication released by Actful, and I went to a class on ICCs, and this was really helpful to me. What on earth are ICCs? So ICCs are investigate and interact. They are the new intercultural communication standards for how we can talk about culture. So you see in here that products and practices are, they have me, I think it's a little bit bigger. Okay, so you can see in here that we still have the same old products and practices that we are used to, especially perspectives is definitely built more into what's going on with these. But now we have benchmarks and performance indicators to go along with these here so that we can actually assess students on how well they're understanding what's going on with culture in our class. So let's just look at one for an example real quick. And first, make sure that you read this article so that you know exactly how these can-do statements can really help shape what's going on in your classroom. We'll talk more about this in, I believe it's the April 7th class. Don't quote me on that, but we're going to do some can-dos, and one of them is going to be about ICCs for sure, because this is really, really going to save our butts as world language teachers, having some that talk in depth about how to assess culture. So for products in my own and other cultures, these are for our novice babies in level 1. I can identify typical products related to familiar and everyday life. Okay, so that's the identification phase. And then practices. In my own and other cultures, I can identify some typical practices related to familiar and everyday life. And then this is where it really gets cool, and this is where it's different, is that we have this added element of interaction now from Actful. So now we can see what's actually important, which is, can students actually interact in the culture? I can communicate with others from the target culture in familiar everyday situations, using memorized language and showing basic cultural awareness. So this is very difficult to make happen in your class, I know, but what you can do in the meantime, until you get it where it needs to be, what you can do is, like, this is the classic, you know, tú y usted, or the knowledge of vos, that kind of thing in Spanish class, and the exact equivalent of it in French with tu and vous voyez and all that good stuff, is showing basic cultural awareness when talking to different ages and social classes and levels of familiarity in your target society. This is something that was really helpful to me when trying to figure out how I was going to assess my students' cultural competence, and I think it's going to be really helpful to you too. So the ICCs are here to help. Okay. This is something that I really needed to hear, and I'm hoping that this will also help you too. Okay. Please put in the comments, either if you're here with me live, love you, or if you're on the replay, love you too. If you've ever done this, forget what it's like to be a complete and utter newbie. Your students are in a kind of scary environment. When it comes to being a newbie in a completely new world language, you are tackling not only the experience of being with new students in your class and a new teacher, but you're no longer speaking your own language. And for us, it's easy to forget because we're familiar with it. But hop on Duolingo, go take the, dang it, what's the conference called? The one that's coming up this summer, July 15th, where they Express Fluency, great conference, that where they do other world language classes. Like you can take Arabic, you can take Russian, you can take Chinese. I'm just trying to think of the classes that aren't typically offered in American schools, but definitely should be. But as we get up there, yeah, Michelle says for sure, take a class in something that that is not at all in your wheelhouse for language. I started taking, I'm definitely behind on it because this takes up a lot of my time making this stuff for you. But I started taking Duolingo courses for Japanese, but even that is really cheating for me because I used to live in Japan when I was a wee little lass, and from 3 to 5. So I had almost fluency, I guess you could call it, for, I couldn't read or write, but I had school fluency, whatever that would be. I was probably intermediate. And my mom used me as a translator, but when I came back to the States, I didn't remember any of it. So I'm trying to learn it again, but oh man, did I forget what it is like to not understand anything that's being said around you and how frustrating that could be. The best teachers, this will really just help you, flex your empathy muscles and get into your students' heads for what they're thinking and what they're feeling and how you can relate to what they're afraid of. This can really teach you, more importantly, what they're not saying aloud about the thoughts that they have about being in your class, because it's hard. It's hard to feel like a complete newbie, like you don't know anything. And also, I would say that from my recent experience of being a newbie in a language class, like you'll never, ever, ever hit that level of expertise. That is often, I think, the missing piece that we forget as teachers, because we remember what it's like to sit in a class and to go through those stages. But those sweet little babies in their first seats, in level 1, they don't know what that's like. So helping them remember and see what that journey is like, it's an easy mistake to make. Let's go on to mistake number 8. Oh, this is a good one. Have you ever done this? Let me know if you have, or if you're currently doing it. This used to drive me insane when this would happen in world language curriculums, because I thought it was so unfair. And I think it contributes a lot to the people voting with their feet. I really do. Is when you leave all the good stuff for levels 2 and 3 or 4 or 5 or AP, you're like, I will leave that for my students who are ready for that level of language. So what do I mean by that? In your level 1 course, you've got, I like pizza. This is my friend Tabitha. No, I don't like shopping. And that's what they walk out of your level 1 class knowing how to say. Pish, no. You can have fully robust social justice units. Ask me how I do it, because I do it. You can have conversation about art. You can have conversations about music. You can talk about them going out on the town. You can have really, really cool, unique units. I've seen, there's this really cool curriculum creator named Megan Smith, who's also in South Carolina, who makes digital creations for schools. And she has this whole unit in, I think it's level 1, that's all about professions and how to talk about professional language. That's in level 1 or like very early level 2. Because of course you want to be able to talk about like what you want to do when you grow up, and everybody wants to do that. And yes, you can use real, authentic texts. I have a whole class for you and a whole library full of resources that are centered and focused on high quality authentic texts. If you need that, I will put a link in the class for the class, and you can definitely check out my store on TPT for all your authentic class needs. All your authentic language needs, but just choose different ones. So what do I mean by that? Is when you're working with level 1 students, go for the authentic texts that are things like news broadcasts, where they have to speak very clearly and concisely, and everything has to be enunciated. Use things like songs that they can rewind and listen to again and again. And there are also many sources that you can find recordings that are guided by levels, but are still native speakers and authentic conversations. Do not give students things like books for children that have a lot of really obscure vocabulary that they're never going to see again, and a lot of crazy tenses, because 5-year-olds in any language are actually expert native speakers. They're still mastering just a few things, but they know pretty much everything. So your students are certainly ready to work with language, and they are more than ready to see a country for what it really looks like and to have deep and meaningful conversations about cultural topics in that language. You do not need to be an expert or even an intermediate low or even a novice high to say things like l'injustice. You don't. And to express opinions is actually a novice mid skill. So it's definitely on the board for anything that you want to do with your level 1s. Do it. Help them fall in love with language by doing the most interesting things that you can think of. The most interesting. Don't leave all the good stuff for level 2 and level 3. Don't leave it for them, because they've already got a lot of interesting things. Okay, this is my last one. And I think it's probably the most important one. It doesn't have that much to do with curriculum, but it's definitely worth saying because this is something that happens a lot in level 1. Let me know in the comments if you feel me, if this has ever happened to you, if this class has ever been treated this way anywhere that you have worked. Okay. Mistake number 9, and the absolute worst thing that you can do, because there's lots of other ways that you could treat this class, is treating level 1s like they are the throwaway class, the class that goes to your new teachers, or the class that is a behavior problem class, because that's somehow like where you get all the catch-alls, whatever you want to call it. It basically means just undermining the entire process of what a level 1 class is, because you're either you or somebody in your school or your guidance or principal, like whatever it might be, whatever force is in there, has automatically viewed level 1 as the easy class or the attainable class, and it creates all kinds of havoc and problems. The way you see your students is the way that they're going to be. The way you see your students is the way that they're going to be. So you can either see your students as the throwaway class or the behavior problem class, or you could see level 1 the way that I see level 1. And I've had level 1s that have been absolute gems and joys to work with. And level 1, I've taught level 1 every single year that I was a teacher. And I've had level 1s that were definitely difficult classes, but this is what has always been true for level 1. Level 1 is the ultimate equalizer. It's the most unique experience at school because it's the only class that students get to experience where everybody's on the same level, where everybody comes into your class being a newbie. And even though that's a little bit scary, every single person is a beginner. And so everybody gets to start from square one. There's no preconceived notions. Well, they're coming in with it, but you don't have to. There's no, well, I've always been good at English. I've always been good at science. I've always been good at history. I've always been good with numbers, whatever it is. Like, they don't know how good they are at language. And this is a skill. When you treat world language like it's a skill and it's not a subject, when you make that shift in your class, everyone enjoys it, even if it's not their favorite class, because everybody enjoys achieving something. It's very different from learning a subject and being good at a subject, because they're learning a skill, and everyone achieves. Everyone gets something out of your class. And the harder that they're working to get to a skill, the better everything is in your classroom, including behavior. Now, let's be real. This does not apply if they are second semester seniors, if they are 18 years old, and they are with you from February to June. If that's the case, then they're second semester seniors. What are you going to do? No, they're not going to care. Just make it really fun and relevant for them and enjoy the fact that you get to see them go through an important part of their life, as well as just how funny they are. I mean, there were a lot of people who really did enjoy teaching second semester seniors. I loved them. They were some of my favorites because they have so many amazing stories to tell you about all of the amazing things that they're starting to do outside of school. School is no longer the center of their universe, and everything is opening up to them. Like, you can ask them about their college, which, by the way, you can all do in the target language. Like, you can start so many amazing conversations with them. So I would say that I have really strong feelings about making sure that your level ones is the ultimate equalizer, the start of a really incredible journey, making them fall in love with language and everything that it means to learn a language, and that essential global skill that everybody should really be doing, not necessarily just people who love language. But if they're a second semester 18-year-old, like, your effort's a little wasted on them. Let them do their thing and just let them enjoy life and try and get the best grade that they can for the stage of life that they are at, okay? Like, let's be realists. But everybody else, give them your full attention and love, no matter what you're working with, no matter what you're working with. And if you are a level one teacher who is with me on this and you absolutely love your level ones, do not ever let your other teachers who teach 2s or 3s talk about level ones like they trash or anything like that, okay? Because that happens all the time. There'll be other language teachers who used to be like, oh, level 1, oh, I can't do level 1 anymore. There's just so many behavior issues. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. They're the best. Level 1s are awesome. I love level 1s. I've loved level 1s, and I've experienced it all. Let me know what your thoughts are on that, but that is how I feel about level 1s. I think they're really, really special. It's a really special experience, even if they don't want to be there, to see somebody blossom and learn a language. It's really powerful experience. So I hope that you enjoyed my little spiel on that in defense of level 1 loves. So those are the 9. Those are the 9. Did any of them surprise you? Put in the comments. Tell me, which one are you currently making? Which one of them? And it's okay. I've made them all. That's how I knew how to make this list, because I'm a diehard level 1 teacher. I always love level 1. I always ask for level 1, no matter what the rep is. I've made them all. And then the last thing that I want you to think about it for your action plan is, what are you going to do this week? Even if it's only one thing. If you need something really simple, it could be, and not very time consuming, it could be something as small as, could you shift the way you think about how you're going to teach level 1, in terms of, instead of trying to teach everything that is possible about Francophone culture, what if you just made them fall in love with just a few pieces of it? Like, what if they just became enamored with the island of Martinique instead of trying to understand the full robustness of that culture? What if instead they understood that there are more French-speaking peoples in the nation of the Congo than there are in France? Like, that's a transformative idea. Just a few things will really shift their perspective in on that. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, either if you are live hanging out with me, I'm so glad that you are here, or if you are on the replay, friends, let me know. What are you doing this week? If it's only one thing. And let's talk about where it goes from here. So you heard at the beginning of this class, either if you're coming in recently, or if you've been watching from the beginning, you are a champion, proud of you. You can download this entire schedule of classes. Oh, I was right. It was April 7th. Okay, so next week, we're diving into can-dos, and it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Next week, we are doing how to make can-dos a can-do in your classroom. And I'm so excited about it. So we'll talk even more about ICCs and how to make that work for you better. But you can go to lalibrelanguagelearning.com/Wednesday to download this whole schedule. And it's got all the links, all the linky links and everything that you need to know to get on that schedule. And then make sure that you also check out this free curriculum that is available to you from South Carolina, lalibrelanguagelearning.com/SC. And it's got units, it's got all the things. And this last part is make sure that you follow me on Instagram. My handle is at La Libre Language Learning. I am that on all the platforms, all the things. I also just got on Clubhouse, so that's a thing. I'm trying to figure that out. It's been fun. I like Clubhouse. But I'm going to be on Instagram tomorrow at 2 p.m. for all of your curriculum questions. I had to move the last one because I had a migraine, so I wasn't able to do the one from last week that I promised. So I'm going to move that to this week, and we're going to do a 2 p.m. Q&A for all your curriculum questions. So make sure that you're following me on Instagram so that you can get that class. And there will, of course, always be a replay. And that's what I got for you today, friends. What do you think? Are you ready for dinner? I know I am. I'm so excited for dinner. I can't wait to see what all of you are working on. Let's check in. Michelle, really great class. Thank you. Michelle, thanks for hanging out with me. I'm so glad that you were here. Thank you. I'm learning so much. Oh, yay, Melissa. I'm so glad. Sheltering grammar is my biggest mistake. Stephanie. It's okay. It's okay. I did it too. We've all been there. We've all been there. And I'm making a curriculum right now too. And I have that bone in my body that's like, don't protect the babies from the hard words, but they need them. They need them. And you know what we can do? I should have shared this tip with you. I know we're running over time here, but let me share this tip with you to make this a little bit easier for you. Is if you treat grammar like vocabulary, especially in level 1, because they don't need all the bitty parts in it, right? Like they don't need to know how everything works together or how it's related to other verbs that are in the same, in the same boot, all that stuff. They don't need to know that. They just need to know the word. Like if you teach Spanish, they just need to know fue means it was, or c'était means it was in French. They're not direct, whatevers. So that is how you can make that happen very quickly, is instead treating it like it's vocabulary, like it's no big deal. I mean, honestly, we do it all the time secretly, especially in restaurant units when we teach conditional in level 1 in the restaurant units by saying like, quisiera, what? Yeah, like we do it all the time. What else we got here? I need help with the Super 7 at higher levels. Ooh. Because my own proficiency level is not as advanced and I was a struggling language learner. Feel you on that. That is exactly how I felt. Because since I teach both Spanish and French, I often would come into roadblocks of my own language all the time. Because when you do both at the same time, you hit roadblocks a lot faster than somebody who's only working on one. I feel you. And that's why I'm good at level 1. That's probably one of the reasons I like level 1 so much too, is because, I know what you mean by that. Help with the Super 7 at higher levels and how you can make that work. Okay, let me get back to you on that for some ideas on that. But I'm really glad that you're reaching out about that. Okay, Stephanie, I'm going to send me an email at lalibrelanguagelearning@gmail.com, and we will get you some help with what it means to work with high frequency verbs at the more advanced level, because there are other people who are way better at it than me who could definitely help you out with that. But I'm going to get you some names first. So send me an email and I'll put that in the comments below. I'm going to do that now. All right. Grammar has been a big mistake, says Mariam. Mariam, make sure that I'm saying your name right, because it's absolutely beautiful and I don't want to mess it up. But it was changing because my district rewrote the curriculum to account for CI. Oh, that happens. Welcome to the rewrite life. Y'all, I'm putting my email in the comments so that if you have any questions, you can send them to me. And I'm going to be adding some other links in there as well. Oh, my spelling's off. I'll go ahead and do that later, but I'm going to do that as soon as we jump off this call. So let me end this, of course, with telling you just how hungry I am, but also that I'm really, really grateful that you decided to spend your time with me, because again, it's a resource that you can't get back. And it's been so much fun to learn with you about curriculum. And I really appreciate you being here. It really means a lot to me. Come and hang out with me next weekend. Gross. Next week, enjoy your weekend. Wednesday, we're going to be talking about can-dos and really getting into it. So I can't wait to see you there. Bye, y'all.